A lot of coaches are feeling it right now. The economy is unpredictable, people are holding on to their money, and getting clients feels harder than ever. But what if this moment in time is meant to propel you forward? Today, I'm talking with my mentor, Donald Miller, the author of Building a Story Brand. We talk about why most coaches blend in and the one move that can make you the go-to expert in your field. If you're feeling stuck or overlooked, this conversation will help you show up with more confidence and start building momentum again. Let's get into it. Welcome to From Click to Client, where we transform a confusing message into a clear, compelling story that sells. I'm your host, Kris Jones, StoryBrand marketing expert. I'm here to help you attract more dream clients with the power of story. I am thrilled to be talking today with Donald Miller, author of Building a Story Brand and Coach Builder. Donald has made a huge impact on my life in so many ways that he probably doesn't even realize. And it's been such a gift to have you, Donald, as my mentor and my friend. And today we are going to talk about how to help coaches and consultants thrive in today's market.
I love it.
So, Don, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a husband and a dad, and that's priority for me. And then I have the honor of owning a couple businesses. They kind of operate together, so it feels like one business. But one is StoryBrand, where we help businesses clarify their message. In order to do that, I certified a bunch of coaches to do that. So I built another business called Coach Builder, which helps coaches build their business and provides a lot of tools for them. And we expanded beyond just messaging coaches into small business coaches, life coaches, executive coaches, things like that. So I sort of shepherd this big coaching community. And then in my free time, not my free time, but my professional coaching career has about 3 clients a year. And I help them create messaging campaigns and execute those messaging campaigns. So I'm not just somebody who helps coaches, I'm actually a coach myself.
Yeah, you get it. You get it on all the levels.
Yeah.
Now you're you're wired as an entrepreneur and a creative.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, looking back, where did that begin? Like, how old were you? How little were you when you when you realized this about yourself?
Well, when I was probably in high school, I just shortly, right in high school, leaving high school, I started to write. And I made a habit of writing. I started writing poetry and then began writing more long form. And I went on a road trip to Oregon from Houston, where I grew up, when I was 21. We ran out of money in Portland. We were trying to get to Alaska, actually. And we ran out of money in Portland, so we stayed there for a little bit. And I ended up being there for 20 years. But soon after I got to Portland, I got a job at a publishing company just in the warehouse. And so my hobby of writing, my desire to be a writer, I got to see sort of firsthand what writers do, how they get published, how they promote books, how they make books. And then I became president of that company within about 4 years. So I was a very young, it's probably 27, president of this company. And we became the fastest growing company in our industry. And so I had a knack for business early on. But then I started writing my own book at night about that road trip. It was in a Volkswagen van. So I wrote this book about a road trip, and it was published. I got it published because I knew some people in publishing, obviously. And then I wrote another book that ended up on the New York Times for almost a year. And then I just took all my entrepreneurial stuff and kind of put it away and did book readings and spoke and went around and talked about my book, and the royalties were enough to live off of. And then we went to make a movie about that specific book about 8-9 years later. And I took all the money I had and invested it in that movie, and the movie failed. And so I lost everything. And that was the moment that I became an entrepreneur. Out of necessity to try to claw back everything I had just lost in a really terrible decision. I say it was a terrible decision. It was actually wonderful, because making the movie, I met some folks who are still very, very close friends, and it wasn't that much money that I lost. It was all of my money, but then started to figure out, wait, I got to somehow get everything I lost back, because we grew up really poor, and I had a fear that I was going to be really poor. So I started a business, and then remembered how much I liked growing a business, and that became StoryBrand Consulting and certifying coaches, and then we kind of moved on from there. So that's a little bit of how I got to be doing this.
So you started with StoryBrand and you traveled around, did StoryBrand workshops,
Yes.
getting proof of concept of the book. Then,
Yeah, before I wrote the book, we probably did 20 or 30 of those workshops, which really helped. It helped to work it out in lecturing to figure out what the actual framework should be. It was definitely tested.
I heard you mentioned at one point that you were just kind of surprised at how well it worked, which makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, we built the framework because I had a little conference going, and we used it to create a messaging campaign for our conference. And the conference more than doubled. I mean, I mean, there were 350 people. We ended up with 2,400 people. So whatever that is, coming to this conference, and we didn't spend any money on advertising. We just talked about it differently. We invited attendees into a story in which they solved the problem by attending this conference, which is the essence of the framework. And so I knew it worked for me, but I wasn't quite sure that it would work for anybody else. So I lightly put out feelers that I've got this framework and can help you clarify a message. And Kris, the first call was Procter and Gamble.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so we flew to Cincinnati. We met with them when they were in the middle of their Queen Latifah campaign. And I remember just thinking, I'm in a room with some of the smartest marketing people in the world. I've never done marketing. I didn't even write a book about messaging. This was before the book, but I'd done some workshops. And I just remember sitting there rather cockily and arrogantly sharing my opinion about what Queen Latifah should be doing. I remember we were like sort of having an out-of-body experience, just going, "What are you doing? What do you know anything? Why do you stop talking?" But I did. I had very strong opinions, and they liked those opinions. And then Ford Lincoln called after that. Those were literally the first two.
Wow.
Ford never paid us anything. They sought our opinion on things, which I think they probably do with a lot of people because they're smart. And then that was, we were off to the races at that point.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think when I got exposed to the framework, you had your podcast, but the book wasn't out yet. And it resonated with me on such a deep level that I knew I had to learn more and like become more masterful at the framework. And of course, I applied it to my own business to learn and to try it out and to play with it a little bit and then never looked back. Like it started overnight. People started coming to my website and traveling to Portland. I had two people, like the month after I implemented the framework, two potential clients. One took a train and one road trip to Portland to meet with me to hire me. And I was
Wow.
like, whoa, this is magic. And that was amazing, of course. But what's been more fun for me is really watching it time and time and time again work for my clients. It's so beautiful. It's everybody should be doing it. And I'm so grateful that it's become kind of common knowledge within the entrepreneurial groups, which is really great. So StoryBrand like got a lot of traction, got a lot of sales, and that really built the foundation of your business. And since then, things have evolved. Like you really engaged in Coach Builder, and tell us what's going on. Like how has this evolved, and where are you heading?
Well, I discovered that the two things that I love, and when I say love, what I really mean is I can talk about them and have conversations about them without getting drained. I mean, it just gives me energy. I'm something of an introvert, so probably a little bit of social anxiety, but interacting with folks and making small talk is really, really exhausting to me. It's very, very difficult unless we're talking about messaging and unless we're talking about how to grow a business. And so I just love those topics and I love learning more and learning from what other people have done. So, we've helped tens of thousands of small businesses, but as a coach, when I started helping coaches build their coaching business, I understood all the nuances much better, and I felt like I was helping myself by helping them. And so, creating a community of coaches, and we're nearly 1,000 strong now, creating a community of coaches who are all trying to help clients either clarify their message or grow their business or come up with a life plan or
Mhm.
identify core values and mission statement, things like that. That feels very close to home to me, and those are the businesses that I care the most about. And so now I kind of feel like I have this family of coaches who've come together and sort of thrown our fortunes in with each other. And so I think where it's going, we have about 1,000 coaches. We want a pass-through goal would be about 2,500, but I'd love to see a day when we have 25,000 coaches and all sorts of coaches. people who are selling their wisdom and helping others succeed. I think it's a lifestyle I understand. It's a business that I understand, and I think I have something to offer in that space. Uh, Often when our coaches come into the community, they're attracted to my books or to me, and then they discover the value of each other. And so for me to also facilitate a community is really exciting as well.
So tell me, what's the biggest mistake that coaches and consultants make?
They don't own a problem. It's the same with every small business. If you just say I'm a coach, it's very hard for me to figure out how or not how, but why I should hire you. But the thing that makes people want to spend their money, whether it's on an item at Walgreens or a coach relationship, is that they're trying to solve a problem. And so when you identify the problem that you solve as a coach, your business starts to uptick. And that is difficult for a lot of coaches because they actually do solve a lot of problems. The problem with that is you can't be known for solving a lot of problems. You can really only be known for solving one. Now, once you start solving that problem, you can unpack because you're in a relationship now. You can unpack other problems that you solve and you can get into other things. But I think that's the number one problem that every coach really sort of needs a niche market. There's a guy his name is Dan Go, and we just talked about him on a podcast episode on why he's been successful. He's moderately successful, has about 2.5 million Instagram followers, a big YouTube channel. He's a physical trainer slash nutritionist kind of personality, but he only works with entrepreneurs. And I just thought that's fascinating because an entrepreneur's body doesn't work any differently than anybody else's body. But because he niched down, he was able to build a brand much, much faster. And
Right.
so, he's able to say things like an entrepreneur's life is unique. It's different. It's harder to stay fit. It's harder to eat right because of the schedule. Therefore, I'm only going to give advice to these people. So you really want one of two things, if not two of two things. What is the main problem I solve? For Dan, it's nutrition and being fit. Uh, and then what demographic do I want to own? And he just chose entrepreneurs. I honestly think if he offered fitness advice, he would have so much competition that we probably wouldn't know who he is. But because he picked a narrow niche market, he can grow. And the beautiful thing about that is he can expand out of that market at any time. Now that he's got 2.5 million followers, he can launch a book, he can launch a product, and he can expand out of that. I think Dr. Becky is a good example of a thought leader who has built an incredible platform. She's my go-to parenting coach. I follow her on Instagram. It is amazing how I'll deal with something with my 4-year-old. She's throwing tantrums for the first time, and I'm like, wait, this is different. And then Dr. Becky will show up on my Instagram and say, "Is your 4-year-old throwing tantrums for the first time?" She might as well say my name. She is my guru. And I talk to her. I'm like, yes, she is. What do I do, Dr. Becky? Help me. She owns parenting. She is a psychologist. She could give great marriage advice. She could great leadership advice, but she's smart enough not to do that. So I think for every coach, you want to figure out, for me, it's messaging. As much as I love helping people build their coaching business, I'm probably never in my life going to get out of the messaging lane. And the only clients that I personally take are clients who need messaging campaigns. They need help in knowing how to say it and then how to disseminate those sound bites. So I own that. And there's some people competing with me out there, but I get to own that. And so for me, it was very strategic to say, hey, Don Miller's going to own messaging. And he's going to own, if you have a confusing messaging, he's going to help you say it. I pursue owning that mental real estate in the body politic. I think that is what every coach needs to sit and think about. Spend some time saying, okay, what problem do I want to own? And I think two things need to be true there. One is you need to, three things really. You need to be very competent at solving that problem. You don't have to be competent at a lot of things, but you need to be competent at that. And then you need to like it. It needs to light you up and give you energy and excite you because that's gonna make the work a lot easier. And then three, you need to monetize it. You need to figure out, okay, how do I charge for this, and what products do I sell that help people solve this problem? I think if you can do those things as a coach, you've probably got job security for a really long time.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, you made the decision, right? You didn't wait for permission or someone to tell you that. You decided, I want to be known as the messaging story guy.
Well, and it was a little, yeah, it was a little bit of that, but it was a little bit of realizing that was happening and saying, okay, if this is happening, if this is where the wind is blowing, I never get tired of talking about it. I've given the StoryBrand framework talk. It's got to be more than 1,000 times now. And if I got up on a stage and gave it today, it would feel like the first time. I just don't get tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a good thing. That's a good sign. And so I decided to pour jet fuel on that. If people are saying that you're the messaging guy, then I'm going to say, okay, well, and that's another thing for coaches. What are people telling you are?
Right.
You may have this ambition to be something, but everybody's telling you you're this. I would ask you to say, to ask yourself the question, should you just be that? And should you own that and do the best you possibly can? And would that be a satisfying life for you? Because that's how people perceive you.
Right. And we're inside the bottle trying to read the label that can only be read from the outside. So
Right.
often other people can look at our bottle and read the label and be like, You're brilliant with this."
With
And
this, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I liken it. I tell my clients, pick one color for your front door. You don't want 18 colors on your front door. Tell them when come to my house, look for the red door. That's my house. When they come in, of course, you're going to have
Right.
different rooms, different colors inside, but everybody comes through that front door, which is the one problem that you solve.
Right. Yeah, the thing that you're known for. And what a luxury it is to be known for anything.
Right.
But
Right.
I think what people don't understand is somebody like Dr. Becky or Dave Ramsey with financial advice, or there's a thousand of them, Andrew Huberman, Peter Attia with longevity. You know, they have strategically made an effort to be known as the person who solves this problem, and there's some work that goes into it. But anybody listening to my voice can do that. It's not by accident.
Hmm. Yeah, I've been following Dr. Becky a long time, and I've watched her messaging evolve. And she used to be kind of the parenting coach for all kinds of kids, and she still does that. If you come into her community, she does. But she's really leaned into what she calls the DFKs, deeply feeling kids, and it's all the parents that have kids where the typical parenting strategies just don't work, and they're
Right.
wired differently. They feel differently. They don't respond to the way that most parenting advice provides.
It's interesting. She let's take her for an example and just see what we can extrapolate in terms of learning how to build a coaching business. Probably most parents would identify their kid as deeply feeling, even if they're not, right? Because they are at a stage where they're throwing tantrums and things like that.
Yeah.
She also has, so she's identified a problem, she's named the problem, which is really amazing. Like what if every coach listening to me could actually name a problem? Because if you name that problem, you have no competition. You literally named it, right?
Right.
So
Right.
now you really own it.
Right.
And then second, she has a paradigm shift. She has sort of one big idea, and she talks about this big idea a lot. And the big idea is that kids are good inside. Actually, they're not bad inside. They're good inside.
Right. Mm.
And that's another thing that we can all learn from. What's the big idea that is uniquely yours? What's the problem you solve? What's that problem called? And feel free to give it your own name. And then what's the big idea that solves that problem? And then you can spend the rest of your life explaining how to solve the problem, or holding people's hands, or being a consultant and going in and just solving the problem for them.
Would you say that idea that kids are good inside is her philosophical statement?
I would say her philosophical statement would be something like parenting doesn't have to be that hard, shouldn't be that hard. I think the where it's a little confusing, but where the kids are good inside probably fits is in the plan. So step one is to understand that your kid is not a bad kid, that they're good inside. Step two is to begin to treat them as such. And step three is, so I would actually stick that in the plan.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so there's a lot happening, like politically, economically. There's just changes in the air, I would say, in the last year for sure. Um, People tend, or what I'm hearing from some of my coaching friends, that people are holding on to their money a little bit tighter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
There's definitely a lack of consumer confidence right now.
right. What can coaches do differently to overcome that?
I think there's a couple things. It's a fantastic question. And it's not just coaches, it's all people in business. Yeah, I tend to look at the news through the lens of messaging. And I understand. So, the messages right now that are affecting consumer confidence, they are not affecting the economy, because the economy is strong. Jobs are up. The Dow Jones is up. Our 401ks are up. People actually have money. So let's say analyze the messages. I think there's messages about tariffs and trade negotiation and unsettled trade negotiation that is affecting the economy, and everybody's wondering, okay, we actually don't know what the future looks like here. Um, but a lot of that is just bluster. It's just messaging. It's not actually policy. I mean, these tariffs, they tend to announce them and then take them back. And you know, Trump likes to he likes to affect things, and he likes to feel powerful. And then when they're going to make people miserable, he backs off. You know, because he also likes to be liked, and so that's it. That explains the whole Trump presidency. I want to feel powerful, but I want you to like me, and so he's always doing things and then backing out of them. So if you look at it as a messaging issue, you just go, okay, I see what they're doing here. The same with AI. Artificial intelligence will be the second thing that's affecting consumer confidence because we really don't know what the future looks like. However, if somebody like Peter Zion, who's a geopolitical guy who I admire, and he's sometimes wrong, but he's often right. He would say that like, you know, two evolutions of ChatGPT from now are impossible for 20 more years because the semiconductors haven't been invented and the power grid won't allow it to happen. So whatever's happening with AI is not going to change a whole lot for another 20 years. Now that message is going to get buried by the press because it's not scary and it's not sensational.
Right.
So sadly, all jobs are going to be replaced, and you know your children will never drive a car. Have you heard that your kids are not going to drive a car? They'll be self-driving cars. Have you ever heard that anywhere? You know, that's a popular message. It's completely untrue. You know, everybody is pulled out of self-driving car funding. Your kids are going to drive cars, but those messages are put in place because people are incentivized to say shocking statements in order to sell advertising and get clicks.
Right.
So the economy is going to be fine in my opinion. So that's thing number one, realize you're okay. However, this is really how people feel, right? People are holding onto their money. Inflation, by the way, is real. You know, people are spending more at the grocery store, so they're being careful about their money. So my advice to anybody trying to grow a business is one, don't buy into the doomsday rhetoric. It's not true. It's almost, with the exception of the Great Depression, it's never been true. And then the second thing is, if people sense that a ship is going down, they look for the life raft. Therefore, you need to be in the life raft business. You know, and if you're a coach, you need to say things like, in these uncertain times, when you don't know what the future looks like, you're going to need help. You're going to need perspective. You're going to need a guide. You're going to need to know where the advantages are. You're going to need some accountability. And that's why I'm going to coach you through this difficult time. Well, you just positioned your coaching business not as a luxury. You positioned it as the life raft. And so people tend to look for the life raft. We did this during COVID. Now, my business was 85% dependent on people getting on airplanes coming to Nashville, Tennessee when COVID happened in March. And we knew we were going to lose 85% of our revenue. So what we did was we emptied out my living room and turned it into a studio and said, we're going to take all of our workshops online. And I got together with Mike McAllowitz and we did a big webinar on how to prepare for the immediate future that COVID is going to cause. Well, that got me tens of thousands of email addresses. And then I said, in a time when you may not even be able to open up your brick and mortar, you may not be able to have anybody in your restaurant, you may not be able to go into anybody's home, you need to clarify your message now more than ever. Because if you have a muddy message, you're going to be the one who everybody ignores. And we did about 30% more business than we'd ever done in the year when we were supposed to do 85% less. And what I kept telling my team was life raft, life raft, life raft. Continue to position us as the life raft. And by the way, I wasn't lying. You know, those businesses, those restaurants that had to pivot and change their website to a delivery outfit, we got them critical messaging that helped them grow during those times, many of them. And so, you know, there's some way that your business helps people survive. And you need to talk about that.
Yes. Just a moment to absorb that information. That was so good. So we've talked about, you know, the power of being known for solving one problem. What are two more things that every coach needs to get more clients?
One is it's a big StoryBrand paradigm shift that you know. It's the customer is the hero and you're the guide. So it's tempting probably for every coach or every entrepreneur, every small business owner to make themselves the hero of the story and tell their story. I think that's bad messaging. I think what you actually need to do is position the customer as the hero of the story and yourself as the guide. So let's unpack that for a second. In stories, you have heroes. You have Rudy wants to play for Notre Dame, E.T. wants to get home, you know, on and on. And then you have guides. Guides would be like Haymitch, who helps Katniss in the Hunger Games, Mary Poppins, who helps transform the lives of the family, especially Mr. Banks. The guide is an interesting character in the story. They are strong, they are equipped, they have usually solved the problem that the hero is suffering from in their backstory, and now they're here to help the hero win the day. You want to position yourself as the guide for a couple of reasons. One is if you position yourself as the hero, which a lot of companies do, and they do it to their own, it damages their own company when they do it. You're positioning yourself as a weak character because all heroes are weak. They're weak, and it's only the last 9 minutes of the movie that they're strong. Until then, they're ill-equipped, afraid, don't know what to do, don't want to take action, in desperate need of help. It's absolutely not the way you want to position yourself. And so you don't want to do that. The second thing is if your customer is a hero in a story and you position yourself as a hero in a story, you're in separate stories. You've just removed yourself from their story. So what you actually want to do is position yourself as the guide. So when somebody says to you, what do you do for a living? I would say, I wrote books for years and I learned how to communicate very clearly. And then I met a lot of people who ran businesses and I just noticed how confusing all of their messaging was. They couldn't communicate clearly. And it broke my heart because it would just be so easy to change a few words and double the size of their businesses. And so I became a messaging coach and I wrote a book about it. Well, did I actually just tell my story? I didn't. What I did was I identified my customer's problem and then positioned myself as the guy who helps them solve that problem. I didn't tell you where I went to school. I didn't tell you I'm married. I didn't tell you I'm a dad. I didn't tell you any of that. I didn't position myself as the hero. I told the part of my story that positioned me as the guide in the customer's life. That stature, that positioning yourself that way is critical to growing a business. And, I was watching an episode of comedians in cars getting coffee.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
It's a great show. Yeah, Seinfeld interviews comedians and he drives them around. They go get coffee and they talk. He was with Seth Rogen. And Seth, on numerous occasions, at least two, would ask Seinfeld a question. And he was a master at spinning out of that question. A master. He would say something like, Seth would say, it's probably hard for you to walk into a coffee shop without getting mobbed. And, any amateur would go, oh gosh, it is. It's so difficult. And I remember one time, blah, blah, blah. And that's not what Jerry Seinfeld did. Jerry Seinfeld said, yeah, I mean, it can be. Are you comfortable? And he just immediately got out of it. Right. And I think Seinfeld knows this is not about me. Mm-hmm. And that's why we love him so much. He just doesn't make it about him. He knows his job is to entertain you. He knows he's not your guide or coach or whatever. That's not his job. And he's not going to make it about him. He's going to kind of make you think that he answered the question, but then he's going to turn around, he's going to get it right back to you. Yeah. And that is what really confident masters of their crafts are able to do. And it's what we as coaches need to do. Now, I think with your spouse and your friends, and there's that the rules don't apply there because it's a human need to tell your story and to be known by people, not your clients. It's not your job. And when I go into a message, strategy session, we talk about the client's business. We don't talk about mine, right? So I always have to be the guide helping the hero win because that's who they're really looking for.
Right. I have clients tell me often, what if my story is boring? I don't have a
you don't need one.
Story. You don't need one. I say, it doesn't matter that your story is about your client. You are very important character in it. But
if you insist, no, I want to tell my story. I say, okay, you can do that. But I want you to just tell part of it. And the story that I want you to tell is why you care so much about this problem and you don't want people to suffer from it anymore. Mm-hmm. If you have that backstory, by the way, that's called the backstory of the guy. Mm-hmm. Tell it all day long. Mm-hmm. Tell it. You can talk about yourself all day long, but only why you care about the customer. Right. It's interesting. There's a woman in my mastermind named Emily, and she has a business where she pursues the money that insurance companies owe pediatricians. So insurance companies try not to pay, right? Mm-hmm. And so 20 to 30% of the money that a pediatrician is owed does not get paid because the insurance company isn't paying it. So she actually works with the insurance companies to get the pediatricians paid. I asked her, I said, we were wireframing a website for her, and I said, we've got this bio here But my philosophy of a bio is don't tell your story, say why you care. And I say, Emily, you're in a very unique business. I mean, it's very, very niched down. I mean, insurance companies that owe pediatricians, like you're the only person on the planet doing this. Why? And she said, I don't know. I just think they deserve to get paid. I go, no, that can't be true. If you cannot have stumbled upon this. I go, tell me, like, how'd you grow up? She goes, well, my mom was a pediatrician. I go, oh, that's interesting. And what sort of tension did you have in the house? She goes, well, we always had financial tension because the insurance companies wouldn't pay us. And she looked at me and just went, oh my word. She had never connected it, ever.
Right.
And I said, well, what happened? She goes, my mom ended up in the hospital with stress-related illnesses because she couldn't pay bills. And when she was in the hospital, my dad took over the billing for the pediatrician stuff and discovered these insurance companies were running this scheme. And he fixed it. And I said, what happened after that? She goes, we didn't have any stress. My mom got better and we opened another practice.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, do you understand what your story is, Emily? She goes, I can't, I'm embarrassed. I never, ever thought of it. And we wrote that down. Now, when a pediatrician reads this, they're going to go, this lady isn't in it for the money.
Right.
This lady's in it for my family. And this lady understands it because her mom went to the hospital. So can you tell your story? It's very important that you tell your story, but you tell it from the perspective of the backstory of the guide, the backstory of how this guide became so competent to help these heroes. And, and if you have some pain or you have a friend who had some pain that the customer has, and that motivated you to start solving this problem, that's a really, really wonderful story.
Yeah, it's a very nuanced way to tell your about me section.
Right,
it appears to be about you, but it's really about you as it relates to the hero and
it's really about the customer and why you specifically care about them. What happened to you that you care so much about? This issue.
Yeah, I think a lot of coaches and business owners feel like they need a really interesting backstory and they really want to tell that. And I always say, great. If you want to tell that, you can tell that. That's for you. That's not the story that's going to make you money. The story that's going to build your business is really inviting your hero into a story with you.
Yeah, they're in desperate need of help. And what's interesting though is if you position yourself as the guide and they begin to trust you and you actually help them, then they actually want to know who you are. Right? I mean, I had knee surgery a few years ago. And I walk in Dr. Rob's office. I don't really want to know Dr. Rob's story. I want to know if he's competent to rip open my knee. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then when he was able to deliver an unbelievable, result for me personally, then I was like, who the heck is this guy? I'd like to know who this guy is. I sent him a game of cornhole for he and his family, and that changed my life. He fixed my knee. So that desire you have to be known, let's not bury it, but let's put it off a little bit. And let's be known as somebody who's competent to solve the customer's problem first. By the way, what you're going to get when you do that is respect. People are going to go, I have such admiration for this person because they solved a problem for me. And I just love them. Now they're interested in who you actually are.
Right. Yeah. Your doctor cared about your struggles and your success, number one. Right. And he worked with you around that. And then you were like, okay, who is this guy?
Then all of a sudden I realized this is a human being who went to med school somewhere. And, because before that I was just in pain. I mean, my knee hurt. Like, are you the guy to help me fix this?
Right.
And I think that's the way a lot of your customers are. They're in pain. If you're a coach, you're only dealing with people who are struggling with something.
Right.
And, if you're a business coach, they can't make payroll or they're worried or they don't know any good tax strategies or those sort of things. And, honor the fact that they're in pain. Don't make it about you.
Right.
Let's help them first.
Right. And help them really not feel alone in their pain. I think sometimes heroes have been with the pain long enough that they've kind of forgotten about it. It's become like the frog in boiling water. It's still painful, but they've grown kind of used to it. And so it can be really helpful to kind of articulate the problem in a way that reminds them, you're struggling with this, but there's a better way and I can help you out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you and I are collaborating on a book right now, which
I couldn't be more excited about it.
I'm so thrilled to be collaborating with you. And this, not to give everything away, but it's really a StoryBrand book specifically for coaches and really really tangible ways to apply StoryBrand to a coaching business and to do it in a way where ideal clients say yes. So,
Yes.
why is this book important right now?
Well, we had the idea of building a story brand for coaches for obvious reasons. Coaching is close to my heart. Building a story brand is the framework that I created. But also, we wondered what it would look like to actually help a specific industry clarify their message. Because the book building a story brand is done well, but it has to stay very broad,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I've worked with everybody from national security to people who are selling fish food. And it's got to reach all those people. So we thought the unique needs and challenges of a coach, not wanting to talk very much about themselves, not being super comfortable with that sometimes, wondering how to create a coaching product and sell it, those sorts of things. We thought this might deserve a book. And what I'm really proud of with the book that we're collaborating on and that you're doing a lot of the writing for is the actual story brand part of it is really quick. I mean, it's like 10 pages. And instead of sort of pretending and adding coaching language to the existing book, we actually have a couple hundred pages of specific strategies on how to get your message out there as a coach.
Mhm.
And it's a completely different and new book than building a story brand, just a little summary of the framework at the beginning. So I'm very, very excited for this to hit the market. I think it's going to be one of those books that tens of thousands of coaches sort of look back and say, that was the moment. When I read that or I listened to the audiobook, that was when I realized I can do this and I can have a high six-figure, maybe even seven-figure coaching business and really transform lives.
Yes. Okay. Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Um, okay. You and I both became parents a little bit later in life. I think we
Yeah,
have that in common, which I think is like the perfect time to have kids because,
you're a lot smarter.
you're a lot smarter. Yeah, it's still a, it's a difficult journey and a joyful one as well. I'm curious, like, I could talk all day long about how having my son made me a better person, but ultimately forced me to have really good boundaries around
Yes.
my work
Yeah.
and to be more strategic about how I work with my clients. And I'd love to hear how Emmeline has impacted your business life.
Yeah, it's for being a dad, it has forced me to compartmentalize my work into specific hours of the day. And what's amazing is, well, the same thing happened when I got married, because I got married at 42 and became a dad at 49. And at 42, I was convinced that I was going to make a lot less money, was not going to be able. But what happened when I actually had to compartmentalize my work into a certain number of hours is I found that I was more focused and I worked harder. And I would say my productivity doubled after getting married.
Mhm,
And yet I was home by 5 every day.
mhm.
And I didn't work on weekends, which was completely different than the way I used to live. So I spent 42 years just working all the time.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. It didn't bother me at all.
No.
But that's a great way to wreck a marriage, right? So but I would say with parenting, it's harder, but have been able to maintain about 90% of that productivity even after becoming a dad. And I'm home pretty much every day by 4 p.m.
Mhm,
And so I spend about 30 minutes to an hour with Emmeline in the morning. And then after 4 p.m. till she goes to bed at 7, she's 4. So she's still going to bed pretty early.
mhm.
We get those 3 hours together. And in summer, all 3 hours are in the swimming pool. That's what we do. And then often I'm able to run home for lunch and spend a little time with her too. I just, that decision came because one of the benefits, as of being a parent when you're older is you're sort of done proving yourself. You know who you are, so you don't have to go out and prove anything, even if you're ambitious.
Mhm.
And you also know that you're going to regret not spending this time with your kid, even if it's annoying and hard, and you're going to regret it because you can't get this time back. So I would say it was a giant upside to me, and it's also, I think, helped me as a person. I've noticed that I relate so much more strongly to my clients because I sort of understand a part of their life that I just didn't understand before. You know, I'd
Yes.
call somebody and say, "Hey, I got to take us to this football game. Can it starts in an hour. Do you want me to pick you up?" And they're just like, "What are you talking about? What universe do you live in? I can leave in an hour." So that let's just say I made a lot of calls and apologized to a lot of guys, assuming that they could just do that. But yeah, and even now there's some rules. I really, it's going to be very difficult to do, and I've certainly not mastered it. but I don't want Emmeline to have memories of me holding a phone.
Mm.
So I literally walk into my house, I put the phone on the credenza, and I just don't pick it up. Now that's not she. If you ask Emmeline, you ever see Dad with his phone? She would say yes, because I've broken that rule many times. But to me, those just being able to be home by 4 or 5 o'clock, not have my phone with me. If I go anywhere with the family, I literally don't take it. I physically leave it,
Wow.
and then I just eye contact. But I thought being a dad was going to be really difficult and hard, and there's certainly certain hard aspects to it. But honestly, if you just don't have your phone with you and you make eye contact, that's like 90% of connecting with any human being. So it's going okay so far.
Right, right. It's not complicated, right? It's
No.
relatively simple, but yeah, the phone piece is
Ah, so hard.
huge. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, Don, thank you so much for your
My
time today.
pleasure.
It's been such a joy. Tell my listeners, where do you want to send them? Where can they get more of your beautiful wisdom?
Well, if you go to coachbuilder.com, you can see all the resources that we offer coaches. And I wrote a book called Coach Builder that has 8 steps to building a coaching business. So it's things like wireframing your website, getting your message out there, all of which Red Door Design can do for you. So I'll give a little plug there. But a lot of coaches are really great at coaching, but they actually just don't know how to grow a business and monetize. So they're missing out on a lot of opportunities there. And so I wrote Coach Builder to help them out. So Coach Builder will be the book. Coachbuilder.com will be the place to go.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, Kris. Good to talk to you again.
Is your website turning away potential clients? I can help you turn that around. Book a money-making messaging call with me today, and we'll transform your story into your most powerful sales tool. That's all for this episode of From Click to Client. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. I'm Kris Jones, and I'll see you next time.